Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 24th of November 2021. These are the stories that we'll be talking about during the course of the show. The first pertains to a human rights activist who has again been detained by the Indian authorities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. His name is Khurram Parvez, and of course the Pakistani Foreign Office has also strongly criticized the arrest of Khurram Parvez. This is not the first time that he's been arrested, and this continues in a whole spate of human-related incidents that have been plaguing India, especially in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is our leading segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the future of Iran's nuclear talks. We know that Iran is going to talk with the other important countries, P5+1, concerning the JCPOA, the future of the JCPOA. But the IAEA has certain reservations as far as Iran is concerned, as far as its stockpiling of uranium is concerned. What will happen with the future of Iran's nuclear program, the sanctions that have been put on Iran as far as this uranium enrichment is concerned? This is going to be our second segment of the day. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, is concerning the National Center for Cyber Security at the Air University that has started a two-day conference. Today is the second and the last day. It concerns International Conference on Cyber Warfare and Security. How important is cyber warfare, cyber security in this current day and age? This is what we are going to discuss in our third segment. Our first segment is, of course, the arrest of Khurram Parvez, a human rights activist. Not the first time that he's been arrested, but nevertheless, again, a spate of human rights abuses that continued unabated in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. More in the following report.
The Hindu fundamentalist BJP regime continues to perpetrate gross human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir with impunity. Arbitrary arrests, harrowing torture, extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances and harassment has become new normal in the besieged valley, rendering a beautiful region into 21st century concentration camp. Besides a bloody killing spree, Indian military has imposed a communication clampdown and suppressing voices of human rights activists who dare to expose the worst excesses of genocidal Indian state apparatus. In its latest reprehensible act, Indian Armed Forces arrested human rights activist Khurram Parvez for daring to expose the shocking, cruel face of Indian occupied forces. Pakistan strongly denounced arbitrary arrests of human rights activists and stated that the current arrest is clear evidence of New Delhi's state terrorism and trampling of fundamental human rights in the occupied valley. Foreign Office spokesperson Asim Iftikhar said in a statement that the reprehensible, unwarranted searches by Indian National Investigation Agency at the offices and residence of Khurram Parvez had also been condemned by international human rights activists and organizations. Amnesty International also slammed India over the arrest, stating that it is yet another example of misuse and violation of anti-terror laws by India. Commenting on the brazen Indian act, Mary Lawler, the UN Special Rapporteur of Human Rights Defenders, called Parvez's arrest disturbing, while adding that he's not a terrorist, he's a human rights defender. Pakistan has persistently urged the relevant international and regional forums to make efforts for accountability of elements involved in perpetrating war crimes in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including targeting of human rights defenders.
Dr. Tasawar Hussain, leading analyst, joins us online, of course, not online, but in the studios to talk about this spate of human rights barbarities that continue unabated in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Dr. Saab, Khurram Parvez, a name that we all know because, of course, he heads a human rights organization. He's a human rights activist. He was arrested previously also in 2016 and let go after more than 2.5 months when nothing was found against him. Again, he's arrested now in 2021. What is India trying to prove?
Well, I think that we need to go back into history in order to make sense of the situation, why India is behaving the way it does. And it demands some sort of philosophical understanding of the situation, that what is prevailing in international relations right now. And what I believe is that we need to recall the post-war context and the philosophical foundations under which this post-war international relations is designed. And it is designed against the pretext of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it was also against the pretext of this whole Holocaust thing, that we need to stop it. We need to stop gross atrocities against
But you know,
human
this
rights.
Holocaust that you talk about, these gross atrocities of human rights, these continue unabated one way or the other in one area of the world or the other. Currently, there are two major areas of conflict. One is Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the other is Palestine. And in both, there are certain similarities as far as the way these barbarities are being perpetrated on the innocent people. Let's come to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Extrajudicial killings, arrest of human rights activists like Khurram Parvez, voices that are muted one way or the other, whether it be journalists or leading politicians. To which extent is India going to go?
Well, I believe that the promise that was made against the pretext, what I was trying to make sense of, is the institutional settlement against this context and philosophical foundations which developed in the age of enlightenment, which is called as modern age. And institutions were established like United Nations in order to stop the free play of human nature, be it coming from ideology, nationalism, ethnicity, race, or whatsoever belief system. Now we thought, means human beings collectively, the thought that we need to put an end to this absurd thing that people are going to kill in the name of ethnicity, in the name of race, in the name of religion, in the name of belief system. And there was an international institution called United Nations in order to have some institutional arrangement, certain rules, regulations, regimes to regulate the behavior of states as well as leaders, those who would be leading those states. But what happened in practice is actually what we see in terms of plague to those international institutions like United Nations. It means that they did not stop. Now we need to wonder why they didn't work the way they were supposed to work. What was the reason behind? The reason
And why they
is
continue to not work in the 21st century when everything is available on the click of a button. We know the latest atrocities that are happening in any corner of the world. Despite that, you know, that click of a button remains a click of a button. No tangible action is taken.
The thing is that what comes in front of all this, strategic interests, economic interests, market interests. You know, there are certain interests, there are certain type of elite, there is certain...
Is that what rules the world now? Economic interests, geo-economic relationship between two countries are superseding all the other human rights abuses?
I would say in practice, this is something which we need to understand, that there are three mainstream stakes. First one is what is known as security, state security, where there is a rugged sense of state sovereignty and you want to militarize yourself in order to protect your state, to protect your state sovereignty. Second thing is what is known as prosperity. So in order to have economic prosperity, you go for commerce and trade. The third thing is called as community. In community thing, you have this whole understanding of international human rights, where there is universal declaration of human rights, international human rights regimes, certain bodies. But what happens in practice is the first two are actually taking lead and community thing is actually lagging behind. So security on the top.
And why is that? So again due to the economic interest, or there's something more to it?
I would say that elite is there at international level. The weight is there at national level. There is a warrior class. There is a kind of relationship between certain elites, which is a kind of order at international level, and we need to then bring into the Marxist explanation. So there is a whole thing which is in terms of international order, international structure, the way it is carved by elite. So it is there to serve elite interests. Now what we can do, this is much more important maybe for this for our understanding, maybe for also our audience, that what is there on the table? How can we make sense of the whole situation? And it demands that we need to look beyond this present arrangement, which is institutional arrangement, because we know that institutional arrangement hasn't worked for us, maybe at least for this part of the world, which is called as subcontinent. So human rights violations are going on, and so goes in the Middle East, where the Palestinian issue is still there, and human rights violations are going on and on and on. So what we need to do then, we need to have some innovative approach. Now this innovative approach demands that rather than thinking about these international institutions which are actually governed by power, there is a layer, there are certain layers. For example, there are powerful states, There are superpowers, there are major powers, then there
and
are
they control the narrative.
And they control the whole situation, including the rhetoric, including the narrative, including the arrangements, including the processes which are going on in their international institutions. For instance, there is a whole thing called lobbying at international level. There are certain groups which are there, and there is a whole thing which you know, and people like us know maybe better, that is a kind of thing like Jewish lobby, Indian lobby. So lobbies are there at international level, international institutions. Now, what we can do, how can we fix this situation? We can fix it by thinking beyond this international institutional arrangement, and maybe thinking beyond this whole rugged state sovereignty thing.
All right. Now, last question to you, Dr. Saab. Looking beyond, thinking beyond the rugged situation, thinking maybe outside the box and trying to find innovative solutions to this current situation that plagues an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And there's a whole list of human rights abuses that have been going on and still continue as we speak. There it has been the arrest of Khurram Parvez, of course, partially disabled, losing his leg in a landmine blast in 2004. And I mean, since then he has been voicing his, he's trying to talk for the rights of the people of an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and his voice has been muted time and again. When we talk of these approaches, what are the first three that come to your mind?
Well, I would say that because the guy Khurram Parvez is a man who is not coming from the state side. He is a kind of activist, human rights activist. It tells a lot about things that state is actually not frightened from civil society as well. So it means that civil society got some currency, it got some power, and we need to make on it. We need to develop on it. That why not to think about people to people? Why not to think about individual to individual? Why not to think about society to society rather than thinking only at the level of state or at the level of international?
But society is also governed by the state, so I mean this
yes, to some extent it is. To some extent it is, but society has some other forces as well. So it's not all about government. So people are there, individuals are there, so society is also there, and there are certain groups, there are certain non-state actors, there are certain agencies, there are certain NGOs, so they are not getting anything from state.
Their role needs to be more prominent. Thank you very much, Dr. Tasawar Hussain Saab, to have joined us and to have talked to us about these out-of-box solutions that areas such as in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the people of those areas need to go to in order to find some kind of a solution to their human rights abuses that are plaguing their area since decades. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Out-of-the-box solutions, let's see if they work or if they will work in the long term, people to people or society to society contact, says Dr. Tasawar Hussain. Our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the future of Iran's nuclear talks. They are to be held on the 29th of this month. Will they work? The IAEA has certain reservations. More in the following report.
The conflicting positions of US and Iran regarding Tehran's nuclear program has grabbed much of the attention in international headlines. Tensions subsided back in 2015 after constructive engagement between Tehran and a group of world powers, the US, UK, France, China, Russia and Germany, culminated in landmark multilateral initiative Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Tensions between Iran and Western Bloc flared up again since the US unilaterally withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018 and reimposed economic sanctions. As Biden administration ascended White House, nuclear talks to salvage the JCPOA and bring Iran back into compliance began in May 2021. Tehran has persistently maintained that its nuclear program is a peaceful one, but regional actors long accused Iran of pursuing nuclear program for strategic designs and deemed the Iran nuclear deal insufficient mechanism to thwart alleged Iranian regional ambitions. In order to address reservations of regional allies, the United States Special Envoy for Iran traveled to United Arab Emirates, Israel, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain ahead of crucial Vienna talks. Illustrating a momentous opportunity to de-escalate ongoing tensions, Vienna negotiations will begin on November 29th on reviving the 2015 accord, and representative of Iran and other signatories of its 2015 nuclear deal will be in Austria to negotiate a path forward. Global nuclear watchdog International Atomic Energy Agency Rafael Grossi visited Iranian capital days before Vienna negotiations and met the country's nuclear chief Mohammad Eslami. It is cogent to mention here that the Vienna negotiations will materialize against the backdrop of reported clashes between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and US naval forces in the Persian Gulf, killing 9 Iranian soldiers in the confrontation.
I'll talk more about the nuclear situation concerning Iran, the future of the talks with the IAEA and the P5+1 and of the nuclear deal. We've been joined by Sitara Noor. She's a senior research fellow at CAS. Thank you very much, Sitara, to have joined us. Sitara, how optimistic do you feel are the countries involved for these talks on the 29th of November, where despite the fact that there are certain reservations that have been put forward by the IAEA regarding the stockpile of uranium?
Thank you, Omar, for having me on the show. And you see, there are 3 major developments, as it was mentioned in the report as well, that we already have a date for the resumption of talks. That's 29th of November. And then IAEA's Director General Rafael Grossi has just recently visited Tehran to break the ice. And thirdly, today IAEA's Board of Governors meeting has started, which is likely to have a heated debate on the Iranian deal issue as well. During his visit to Tehran, Grossi reportedly requested agencies access to some of the facilities where Iran had withdrew the IAEA's cameras, specifically the Karaj centrifuge assembly plant. IAEA had placed cameras in the plant that were giving real-time information to the agency, but that got damaged as a result of the blast that was allegedly done by the Israel. And since then, there is no agency supervision, and Iran has refused to resume that unilaterally. And as some of the report has emerged during the Grossi's visit, Iran had demanded that the IAEA must drop its probe into the discovery of the undisclosed nuclear material in Iran over the past 2 years. And if this wants to gain access to the Karaj plant, which of course Grossi did not agree to. So if you look at the emerging situation, I think the situation might lead to both ways, but it is really significant that at least the both sides have agreed. Iran has agreed to become part of to start the 7th round of the negotiations and the 7th round of the Vienna talks, as we call it.
Negotiations, 29th of this month, they are going to talk. There are reservations not only from the IAEA, but there are also reservations from other countries that form JCPOA. There are also reservations from Israel. We know very well. We also know of the past and the present toxic relationship that exists between Israel and Iran. Where is all of this going to lead to? Do you feel that some kind of JCPOA will emerge after these talks on the 29th? Maybe a more diluted form of the previous agreement, but on the same side or at the same time, Iran wants the same agreement to be reinstated. Do you feel that could happen?
You see, this is precisely what there are certain sticking points, as we all can assess from the emerging situation. And if you look at what Iranian demands are, Iran, as you rightly stated, wants the original reinstatement of the original JCPOA, but American side want to, kind of add certain more additional requirements or additional requirements they want from the Iran, which Iran is refusing. And, there is also important to see that as you talk about that, is there the chance? What are the chances of success? So you see, there is a very important domestic angle to it. Both countries definitely, the very fact that both countries have agreed to resume the talks, the 7th most important round of talks, which probably would be the final round, while United States is signifying that there is less time. Time and again, they are warning Iran that this cannot go forever, primarily because there is a lot of domestic criticism at home, not only in Iran, but also in the United States, because if you look at the Biden administration is receiving severe criticism from the Republicans, who are supported by Iran's regional adversaries, such as Israel and Saudi Arabia, that are criticizing any anticipated dispensation to Iran, which might be given by the Biden administration. But having said that, Biden had made it one of the primary foreign policy objectives during his presidential campaign So they are kind of in a catch-22 kind of situation that they really want to do it, but on the other hand, they have to be considerate
There's
of the
another
domestic.
catch-22 situation, Sitara, when it comes to the Middle Eastern countries. A lot of countries in the West, the powers that be, including Israel, have these apprehensions that if Iran is given the leeway as far as the JCPOA is concerned and the nuclear deal is concerned, it might give rise to other countries in the region also developing their nuclear stockpile. Or even on the flip end of the coin, if they do not agree to anything with Iran as far as their uranium enrichment or the future of the JCPOA is concerned, other countries might take stock of it and start with their own form of nuclear enrichment or nuclear program. It's also a very dicey situation as far as the nuclear technology that is being acquired across the world is concerned.
You see, I think there is a less likelihood that Iran actually would go nuclear eventually, or would be allowed to go nuclear, if we may call it, because even if Iran resumes its it resumes on the path of the nuclear weapons development, you see, there have been instances where Israel had conducted sabotage attacks earlier in Natanz and the centrifuges that Iran had, and this recent number of assassination of the nuclear scientists as well. So there is very less likelihood that Iran would eventually get to that side. And you see, Iran probably is using it as a bargaining chip as well. I mean, they have time and again, they have reassured the world that they are not really, the nuclear program is only for the peaceful purposes. But you have highlighted an important point, and I think it's important to highlight that so far, nuclear talks has remained somewhat insulated from other regional developments. For example, there were, number of clashes. There were strikes against Iran-backed targets in Iraq and Syria. But these developments, regional developments, expose the fragility of the process. And that
exactly.
actually,
And that is a very important point that you've raised, Sitara, and what that I'll end this segment, fragility of this whole process. This process is extremely fragile, and so it's very important for the parties that be to go into these agreements, their eyes open, their ears open, and try to find out some kind of solution, so that these seventh round of talks, which, as you said, the US says will be the last round of talks, should be the most conclusive of these talks. Thank you very much, Sitara, Noor, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the future of Iran's nuclear deal, as well as its relationship with the P5+1 as far as the JCPOA is concerned. Let's go to our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns a two-day workshop that is being held on cybersecurity and cyber warfare, that is being held at the Air University. It's very important in this day and age to understand what cyber warfare and cybersecurity is all about. More in the following report.
The tech-intensive modern world is surely vulnerable to grey zone threats, and most significant amongst the new security challenges is the shadowy realm of cyber world. There are various shades of grey when it comes to cybersecurity threats, such that some vulnerabilities may pose large risks while others may not, and hence it's very important to deliberate and collaborate to share information and propose valuable frameworks to combat cyber threats. Mainstream media and academia has only recently started stressing lethality of cyber attacks, information security, privacy, so there remains considerable gap in general understanding of how cyber warfare threatens national security in both developing and developed world. The growing reliance of states on cyberspace and digital networks has revolutionized the present-day threat spectrum. Indian cyber aggression against Pakistan employs wide-ranging tactics in its bid to foment destabilization, including deceitful fabrication by hacking personal mobiles and technical gadgets of government officials and military personnel. As Pakistan's key advisory, India is amongst the countries which aspire for a proliferating cyber arms culture and militarizing the cyberspace, so the country, being cognizant of this danger, is working upon its cyber capabilities for force projection. The world has transformed into a digital universe, as Stephen Hawking said. We are all now connected by the internet like neurons in a giant brain, and thus protection of cyber assets from rogue tech-savvy elements is crucial to protect vital national interests.
Now, of course, cybersecurity or cyber warfare is very important. Fifth generation warfare, this is what we call as well. Other countries such as India have been putting Pakistan into this kind of a situation in which online, one way or the other, they are not only trying to destabilize Pakistan, but also trying to give Pakistan a bad name through the internet, through online, through cyber warfare, and that is something that needs to be catered to in a very proper manner, in a very extensive and exhaustive manner so that all these issues could be properly catered to. Dr. Mehreen Afzal, Chairperson of the Cybersecurity Department at the IIOJK University, joins us online. Dr. Sahaba, thank you very much to have joined us. Ma'am, how important is this 2-day workshop that is being held at the IIOJK University, and how has been the reaction from the different industries that have taken part in this 2-day conference?
Well, this was a very, very important event. Basically, the conferences are meant for connectivity and where different people come and share their views and say their ideas. But this event was very important because not only industry was part of it, academia was part of it, defense sector, our government sector, they all were on one platform, and it was a very, very important factor, because now I think that many departments and many people are giving it due importance what it deserves. So it was an important event, and obviously people were like, and there were many researchers from Turkey, from Russia, from China. There were some online discussions, and it was a very, very interesting event.
Have the countries or have the departments that have taken part in this 2-day conference, Dr. Saiba, understood the importance of cybersecurity?
Well, I believe that today they understand better, and with such events getting more importance, they will understand its importance more. A few years back, it was not considered a part of our our schemes. But now cybersecurity policy is in place. Cybersecurity policy of Pakistan, first cybersecurity policy, and with this, I think people are taking it seriously.
Do you feel that our youth, our agencies, our organizations, our universities and educational institutions understand the importance of the vulnerability that is associated with everything that we put online? Dr. Saiba, can you hear us? Well, we were in conversation with Dr. Mehreen Afzal, Chairperson, Cybersecurity Department, Air University. Dr. Saiba, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
Dr. Saiba, do people, whether it be students or whether it be the organizations in Pakistan, the universities, understand the importance of cybersecurity and how vulnerable we can be if we do not take the necessary measures?
Well, now universities are taking it very seriously. HEC, I would say, HEC has has played a very, very positive role. Now they have sponsored a National Cybersecurity Academy as well, and many universities in Pakistan is now offering not only the undergrad program of Bachelors of Science of Cybersecurity or Bachelor of Engineering of Cybersecurity, but also MS and PhD are going on. So I think academia is now on it, and they are giving it due importance. And what will happen if we are not able to handle it properly? I would say that we can lose many things because now cyber warfare is not we cannot take it in an isolation. It's part of every life now. So it is very important.
Of course, the importance cannot be denied of cybersecurity. Therefore, everybody, whether it be educational institutions like yourself or the organizations in Pakistan and in other developing countries, need to be cognizant of that and take the necessary measures. And in that respect, this 2-day conference has been extremely important, the ICCWS 2021. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news segments and stories. Stay safe and of course follow the SOPs. Get yourselves vaccinated. Allah Hafiz.